My fear wasn't the predators themselves, it was the fact that I couldn't run away. Here was me lying with a pair of legs that were just jelly.
Greg knows he has to find shelter, both from potential predators and the sun. His only option is the plane.
Fire or no fire, I got to get back, and I've got to face that plane again.
Zimbabwe, Africa, home to some of the most varied animal life in the world, much of it under threat from poachers and encroaching civilization. Greg Rasmussen was born in England but came to Africa as a young boy. For the past 12 years, he's dedicated himself to saving a rare species of African dog on the brink of extinction.
I've always been passionate about wildlife from day one. I mean, even as a child, I love the bush, I love Africa. It holds an endless fascination. I mean, it's always changing, and there's just so much to learn. It's like a book that just never ends.
Greg is one of the few pilots in the area, and even though he's busy with his own project, he's agreed to help a fellow conservationist search for a lost rhino. An ultralight plane is a cheap and efficient way to cover the African bush, but is also very dangerous to fly under certain weather conditions.
Temperatures in the day can be very, very hot. Tricky flying conditions for a light aircraft. Because, it's hot, the air's thin. So it's quite hard keeping the plane up in the air. Suddenly I went into something known as a wing stall. Literally one wing's flying and one wing isn't. Suddenly I had this gut-wrenching feeling. I put full power on the rudder. Pulling back on the stick, I was doing the right thing, and it wasn't working. And the plane started to go down in a spiral. And the ground was coming up pretty damn fast. And then there's a split second. You know you've passed the point of any return. I almost didn't want to open my eyes. I didn't know what I was going to see, what I was going to feel, what I was going to find. I was totally dazed, stunned. And I was like, I'm alive. I'm alive. And at that second, petrol started dripping over me. And I just pulled myself out, literally almost fell out of the plane. As the petrol started to come down, I had these visions of this wall of fire. And I could just see myself being incinerated alive. And I knew my legs were doing nothing. I couldn't do anything with the legs at all, but I just had to get away from this plane. I mean, this thing was a nightmare now. And then I suddenly thought, Mayday. I've got to call Mayday.
Greg has to try and make a call. No one knows exactly where he is or that he has crashed. He has no survival gear with him, no food, no water, and he's severely injured.
Mayday! Mayday! And the whole handset was hot. The crash had short-circuited all the batteries and had literally fried my only means of survival, the emergency radio. And then something happened that literally just changed almost everything. The pain hit. Because the adrenaline had worn off.
On the outside of his body, Greg has only a few superficial scrapes, but inside he is bleeding badly and his legs are broken in 6 different places.
That was a pain that I'd never experienced before. Anything like it, anything that even came close to it. My fear wasn't the predators themselves, it was the fact that I couldn't run away. Here was me lying with a pair of legs that were just jelly.
Greg knows he has to find shelter, both from potential predators and the sun. His only option is the plane.
Fire or no fire, I got to get back, and I've got to face that plane again.
The head warden of Cinematella Wildlife Refuge, Norman English, organises a search and rescue party. The park is over 700 square miles. He and Greg's best friend, Peter, can only start looking for Greg where the rhino he was tracking was last sighted.
Did he radio in at any point?
Nah, no radio contact at all. But he was searching up near where the rhino were last sighted.
The rhinos are tagged, right? If we find them, we find Greg.
Greg took the only tracking device we have with him.
Without a tracking device, Peter and Norman have no way of knowing where Greg's plane crashed.
I was sure that he was alive, but you know that you've not got much time. Almost as each minute passes by, of course, you're becoming more and more concerned.
What about an aerial search?
Already started. Pilot from Victoria Falls came up in his Cessna.
I was thinking, we have to find him. Even if you've survived the crash, there's animals, there's wildlife that can kill him. The chances of him surviving are getting slimmer and slimmer.
Peter and Norman have no idea that Greg is 40 miles from where they think he is. Greg's condition is now critical because of his injuries, exposure in the hot temperatures, and lack of water.
I was so close to the plane, I could smell the petrol. I gave it all the energy I possibly could. And just as I got underneath it, something felt a bit sticky on my mouth. My lips had turned to rubber. They'd plasticized. And a piece of my lip came off. And it went to the back of my throat. You know, I suddenly came to this horrible realization. I just swallowed my lip. I was terrified to even think about going to sleep because I knew that I wouldn't wake up again. That would be it.
Then Greg's worst nightmare comes to life. Once again, he recognizes an animal by the sound its feet make when they touch the ground. He hears a hyena.
And I thought, it's coming behind me. And it's going to come right in the worst spot. It's going to come round the back, which is where I really had absolutely no control.
Once again, Greg uses his knowledge of animal behavior. He grabs hold of his stick and gets ready to hit the plane with it and create a noise to startle the beast.
And I waited until it seemed like forever. I knew if something came one step closer, then would have meant that I'd failed. Then I heard this, like, just footfall, just getting less and less and less. I remember lying there at that particular point thinking, is there anything else that's going to be chucked at me? You know, what else is going to come? You know, what other brick's going to come down?
Greg does his best to stay positive. In 1 hour, the sun will rise and he will have made it through the night. But it is one very long hour.
I watched, looking for the sun to come over the horizon. And when it finally did, I felt these rays coming all the way towards me. And it was an amazing experience. I suddenly felt wonderful. I was bathed in light and heat and warmth. I felt secure for a moment. And then the harsh reality dawned on me that it was that sun, that burning, was going to continue and it was going to kill me. And then I heard these footfall. I can't describe. Of course, I knew what footfalls those were. And among them was Peter. And I suddenly looked and I couldn't believe it, that was him. I couldn't even speak to anybody. And people were just saying what happened, and I just had to say, wing, stall, and that's all I could say.
It was really overwhelming. He'd survived. And it was sort of affirmation of my belief in him.
The feeling that I wasn't going to die was just indescribable. I'd fought this and I'd won. And somebody came up, I hadn't got a clue who it was. Someone put their hand on my shoulder and said, "You're in safe hands now."